Welcome back to another episode of Fill in the Blank podcast. I am the host here, Phil Austin. I have a great guest with me today. She's a longtime friend of mine. Her name is Meghan Rector. We go way, 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 way back. I think we even had kindergarten together or something to that effect, but we've been longtime friends. She's currently residing in California, where she joins us today. So we're doing a little East Coast, West Coast thing. Meghan Rector, welcome to Fill in the Blank podcast.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Meghan, one of the great things that it really inspired me to have you on, and you're a great person to begin with. So, I definitely thankful that you're my friend, of course. But one of the cool things that you're doing more recently, you've been posting some videos on Facebook, which I really found were really kind of cool and unique because it shows something that's in our lives that we don't necessarily pay too much attention to, right? We just kind of see it and we just kind of disregard it. And you've kind of taken it to a whole nother depth of what the realities of that type of life is. Do you want to go ahead and start and just kind of tell me what got you started and talk about what, yeah, basically what made you get into that?
Okay, yeah, sure. So first of all, I work as a special inspector in the Bay Area, and I'm currently working on this project in San Francisco. It's around the Tenderloin area, and it's a homeless housing structure that we're building. I'm actually working on 3 homeless apartment structures in a 1.5 mile radius. So there's 2 other buildings really, really close. And at first I'm just going to work, and we had night shift due to the nature of the construction we're doing. And I don't happen to do that much work each night. So I'm only actually working maybe 5 minutes a night. So I have all this free time all night long. And there's tons of homeless people in the area. There's tons of drug addicts. I mean, just doing openly shooting up heroin, smoking crack, snorting powders, smoking with, tinfoil and a straw. Like, it's incredible. Nobody's hiding. It's all out in your face. And it's just like, oh my God, and at first it was sort of an entertainment thing. Like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, I have to work night work, but guess what? I get to see all night. It was kind of fun. One of my first videos I posted was, a guy in a beard wearing a skirt, and he was barefoot and he was pole dancing on one of the street poles. And so, at first it's kind of entertainment. And then after that, there was this guy in the alley behind us who one of the truck drivers saw him snort some drugs, and then he folded down into himself, like in thirds. He folded at the knees, he folded at the waist, just sort of collapsed. And I was walking up and down the alley, all night, and every time I passed him, I could hear him snoring loudly. And so I'm like, okay, I guess he's alive. I mean, in this area, especially more deep in the Tenderloin, people are so messed up on drugs that it is not uncommon to see people hunched over like they're statues in the middle of the sidewalk. And it just amazes me that they can even stay up, like how they have balance when they're bent over at the waist, hanging over. It's just crazy to me. But, it's all over. So you just have to accept that, oh, well, this is what it is. This is life in San Francisco.
Right.
So one time I walked by the guy who had folded over on himself, and I no longer heard the snoring. And so I stood there for a minute, and I was trying to watch him, try to see if there was any movement, and another person, another street person happened to walk by at the time, and he noticed me staring at the guy, and he went over to the guy and he started moving on. And anyway, he wasn't responding. And so we straightened him out, and the guy told me to call 911. I've never dealt with this. So this was like completely new to me. I've never seen anybody overdose. Right. I've never seen this type of situation. And so I called 911, and, they were telling us to do chest compressions and help assist with breathing. And they asked me to do, can you give mouth to mouth? And I was just like, oh my God, I don't know. I mean, this is a street person who doesn't have any shoes on. They just did drugs. This is the middle of the pandemic in San Francisco. And I'm supposed to give mouth to mouth to this person. And before I had to make a decision, the other guy who was walking by, he, got involved in the mouth to mouth, and he put his, his fist up to his
Mm-hmm.
mouth. And so I helped, plugging the guy's nose and chest compressions. And
Okay.
paramedics got there and took over. And by the time, they did everything and left, there was no response. And his heart had stopped a couple times while the heart monitor was on. So I'm not a medical person. I don't know anything about that. But I asked them, I said, so now what happens? How long until they're back on the street? And they said, well, it depends on brain function.
Yeah.
So I tried to follow up, but of course I didn't know the person's name and nobody would tell me anything, privacy stuff. So,
Right.
oh well. And when I was trying to call the person I spoke with at the hospital, she's just like, you just have to accept in these situations that you can't have closure. Just have to hope for the best. So that really kind of hit home for me, and that turned it from, wow, this is so entertaining, to holy shit, these people are real. They have real lives. Like, they have pain, they have sorrow. Like, this is terrible. And I was so upset that day. I was so sad, because I just kind of assumed that this person maybe didn't make it or maybe didn't bounce back, and it's just really sad to see. And and it was a trans man. When the paramedics came, they cut open the shirt to put the chest heart monitors on. And I was surprised to see, that it was biologically a woman who had been strapping, herself down to appear more as a man. And that even touched me even more as well, because I just feel like it must be so hard for trans people, who are not accepted. And if you legitimately feel like you're not in the body that's right for you, like, how confusing, and it just seems like there's a lot of trans people on the street that I see, and I just feel like they have so much pain and suffering that they don't know how to deal with, or they don't have the tools to deal with, and they turn to drugs. And this is what happened. This poor guy. I mean, I think it was like May 2nd or something. So, the first of the month, the checks come out, everybody gets their money, everybody can get their drugs, and I guess it's that kind of a cycle. So
yeah.
But anyway, so I went back to work the next day, and I just sort of started, things changed a little bit for me, and I started talking to people. And that was when I met Johnny, and Johnny started performing for me. And, and that was incredible too, because it's like, oh my God, this guy is like super interesting, and he's a total character. And this is like incredible. And he wanted to do it. He was all thrilled. He knew I was recording everything, and he wanted to perform. It was hard to get him to talk about real stuff off camera. Like, I've asked him several times about his past, and it's interesting because, the type of, when you ask somebody questions about themselves and you have an idea of what you want to know, they're not necessarily going to tell you what you want to know, right? If you're not specifically asking those questions. So he sort of, rambled on about like other things that were not really like the type of information I was trying to gather. And it's like, okay, I lived here when I was this old, and I lived here when I was this old. But I wanted to hear more about the trauma, and like the pain and the suffering, and how things didn't work out for him, and how he got to where he is. And who knows, I still have a couple more days out there, so maybe I'll, get something a little bit more meaningful out of him. But, in the meantime, things have been changing. There's different people coming lately. So there's new faces. And I mean, not last night. I wasn't working last night. Thursday night was my last shift last week. And it was just incredible. I got 4 incredible interviews out of people who I met. And it's kind of interesting because there's primarily Black people who are in this area. There's not that many white people walking around. There's some. And it's more males as well, not as many females. And then I'm the one female, construction worker on this project at night. And so I'm highly visible. And of course I'm white, so I stand out, because everybody else is kind of Black around there. And so it's just, I'm the white girl with the construction hat who goes up and down the alley talking to everybody, interviewing people. And I'm starting to get to know the people who are around, by name. And I'll say hi to them. They'll come up and say, hi, how are you doing? They're friendly. They say, nice things. They're polite.
Mhm.
They come through the construction zone, and most everybody's polite. Hey, excuse me, can I walk through here? Is it okay if I go through here? I mean, it's just, people are really nice and friendly.
Common courtesy.
Yeah, there's a lot of common courtesy that they show to us. Of course, then I mean the reality of the streets is not about common courtesy, you
Very
know.
true. Mhm. Yeah.
So like Elsie, one of the women that I've featured and who I met and I spoke with, she's homeless, and she lived in the alley for a couple weeks in May when I was out there, and she had quite a collection of belongings, and but each day it was like a sob story, or that's the way one of my coworkers put it.
Mhm.
Each day they would try to ask her to move a little bit out of the way, for our equipment and stuff, and she would always say, oh well, this happened and this happened and this happened, and I'm sure all that stuff did happen. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of things happen when you're living on the street and you don't have a safe place. You can't put your belongings in a safe place. I mean, just imagine that you had to take your blankets with you, or your
Yeah.
documents, or whatever's important to you that you don't want somebody to steal everywhere you went. It's incredible. And she was shoeless when I met her. She didn't have any shoes because she had taken them off to sleep and somebody had stolen them.
Yeah.
And
Sorry. Go ahead.
it's just incredible that it's such basic needs are just not met, and that there's so many people who are walking around barefoot.
Yeah, you've touched on a lot of interesting points. Let me recap real quick. So you live in California and you've got this job in essentially, I'm guessing Tenderloin. Is that downtown San Francisco, or is it like like an area of San Francisco?
Yeah,
Okay,
downtown.
downtown. So it's a certain block or a certain neighborhood, as you would say, is called the Tenderloin. Is that correct, or
Yes.
Tenderloin? In downtown San Francisco, and you're on the job site of working at a construction zone that's actually building residential units for actual homeless people. So many of the people that you're actually encountering potentially may have these homes awarded to them or given to them. Correct?
Yes,
There's the
exactly.
potential for that. And this is what kind of really kind of interested me in what you're doing, which I think is fabulous. I mean, and you're doing a natural job for it. I mean, I'm sure it's not hard. You're just talking to people, but it just amazes me because, like I said, on the other side of it, we see the homeless and we see people in need, but we see these characters, in any major city that you go to, and you have a unique perspective because if you were just walking down the street at that time of night, it may not turn out to be that same type of situation. You're maybe looked at as a target, you may be looked at as a threat even, but because you're in this work zone, regardless of what you're building, but you're in this work zone at night, which is, be honest, that's when all the craziness more or less will happen. You're there and you're presenting yourself to these people, and they're opening up to conversate with you. But they're opening themselves up to have, and you've had some really unique conversations. And like you said, you're watching these videos and you're talking to the people, and then you're saying, "Hey, I was talking to this person last night," and the next night they're there and they've lost. People have walked through while they're sleeping, rifled through their belongings, taken the stuff that they want or they need, and they go on their merry way. And now these people have no shoes, or just you don't think about how of a dangerous, not so much dangerous, but just what day in and day out must be like for these people outside of just not being homeless. Like you said, they don't have possessions. And when the possessions they do try to, accumulate are often taken right out from underneath them while they're sleeping.
Yeah. I mean, it's so sad. Like Johnny, for example, he the night I filmed him building the cardboard house, he told me that he was an author, and and that he'd bring the book the next night. And the next night he brought the book and he showed me, and it was a legitimate book that he wrote. It has his picture on it, his name on it, and he was very proud of that. And then a week later, I hear that somebody stole all his stuff and his book that took him 14 years to write, that it's the only copy, is a master copy, he hadn't published it, is gone. And he's devastated. This is nothing that's valuable to anybody else. It's only valuable to him.
Right.
But it's gone. It's
Yeah.
just, it's so sad.
Now, had you been to San Francisco for like vacation or for just visiting prior to this job?
I went when I was like 12. I
Okay.
went to Alcatraz and I went to that, and I don't remember anything about seeing the homeless.
Right. Would you say, I mean, how, in your perspective, now obviously you're working in an area that I'm assuming is predominantly, it sounds like, a homeless area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now I've been to San Francisco. Last time I was there was maybe 2008, 2007, somewhere in there. And my wife and I went, and there was some homeless, but what I'm hearing now, and I had a friend that was actually recently through there. It's a whole, it's out of control, to be, and what is your take on, like, through your experiences working down there? What is your take as far as the abundance or the amount of homeless that you're seeing?
It is so shocking. Not specifically in the few blocks where I'm at now, but there are much worse areas. This is lightly smattered with homeless. Some of the streets, a lot of people are hanging out at night, like it's a very populated area, but it's not, you don't see the massive tents that you see in other areas. And because I work in so many different places, I typically don't have a regular job location day to day. I go to 2 or 3 different locations each day, multiple places in San Francisco. I primarily work in San Francisco. That's the city I do my most work in. So I drive through many, many areas of San Francisco, not because I'm going to my friend's house or places I know, but because my work is taking me there. And it's just incredible. I mean, there's some places like by the railroads or, closer to like the Tenderloin, the center of the city, the heart, under the freeways and the bridges where the tents pop up. And I mean, my mouth drops open. I'm sure everybody's does, because it's just, and I'm sort of used to seeing it at this point, but it is just incredible how many tents are lined up. You have, old camper trailers, or not trailers, motorhomes, that are parked on the street. And San Francisco, most cities have street sweeping. So the vehicles have to move or you get ticketed, right? It's $90 a ticket. So you can't just have a broke down car and live in it for the rest of your life, because you have to move that car. So that limits some of it to a point. But, people, the tents, I mean, it's just sort of an accepted what can you do? I mean, people are going to live somewhere, and the city just has to accept that this is the reality. And when you have, I don't know, 30, 40 people just living without, sanitation, without water, it's going to be a problem. And so they provide, in these larger areas, they provide porta pots and hand washing stations, not just for the homeless, but for the population, health and safety reasons, right? Because I heard that there was a hepatitis C outbreak years ago in LA, maybe in the Skid Row area or something. And after that, because it spread to, the non-homeless population. So it's a population problem. It's not a homeless problem. And so that's why, there's porta pots and there's hand washing stations. It's not that the city is condoning homeless life. It's the reality of, you have to help them stay clean or else we all suffer.
True. That's a very interesting point. How do I phrase this? Do you think that those are being effective? I mean, as far as, obviously it keeps people from defecating and urinating on the streets. Um, have you seen them being abused at all? Or, are they being used as intended? What is your take on that?
I don't have any porta pots near me. Like, I'm not near these tent cities. I'm near like smaller tent cities or just cardboard people just randomly laying on the street, with a blanket over them. So I don't know if they're being abused. I know a coworker of mine from Nevada, he told me a little story where he came and he happened to be in, I don't know, Oakland or San Francisco area, and he had to go to the bathroom really bad. And he saw, a porta pot near a tent neighborhood, and he pulled over to go use a porta pot. And he was confronted, like, who are you and why are you in our neighborhood? And they didn't want him to use the porta pot. That's our porta pot. What are you doing
Mm.
here? So it's it comes a proprietary thing. Like, this is ours. Who are you? You're not one of us.
So you're
You
saying
know,
the inhabitants of that area, not so much residents, but the homeless inhabitants of that area were actually kind of establishing that porta potty as,
right?
no
Is that
outsiders allowed kind of thing, right?
yeah? I mean, even on a job site, we have the porta pots are cleaned out twice a week. But depending on how many people you have, the toilet paper can be gone before the next time they come, or the
Correct.
water could be gone, or the soap could be gone. So you don't want to have just a bunch of extra people using your supplies that are going to run out before you get more. I mean,
Interesting.
this is, what are you going to do? I mean, to eat, wash your hands. I mean, not that hygiene is a huge part of homelessness, because it's not. That's
Right.
probably just for the lucky communities that happen to be in the larger tent districts that have the porta pots. But that's not what I see. I heard that there's a trailer a couple blocks away from the location I'm working in that does offer free showers and free bathroom, and have some sort of security to not, have it get too crazy. But I haven't seen that myself. That's just something I heard. What I see is I literally see people urinating on the street. I see people, crapping on the street. I see that.
Hmm.
I see puke when I walk down the street to go to the pizza restaurant for my 2 a.m. lunch break. You know, it's, it's all over. And I prefer to walk down the middle of the street than on the sidewalks, because the sidewalks are usually where, you don't want to walk, because that's where everybody's going to the bathroom.
Interesting. So the sidewalks are essentially covered, if you will. Um, they're messy. Let's just say that,
You
right?
want to watch where you walk, where you step,
Wow.
for
Wow.
sure. And I mean, people have dogs too, and they don't always pick up after their dog. I bring my dog to
You're
work
saying
with me.
do the homeless people do, or just people in
Yes.
general? Both.
Yes, homeless people, a lot of homeless people have dogs.
Okay. And
And
obviously they're just kind of let them go where they got to go.
I mean, I'm not saying they all do, but sometimes I can tell a difference between human poop and dog poop, so that, okay, well, somebody didn't pick up their dog's poop, but I mean, these streets, at least in this area, every morning somebody comes and they spray them down with water, and there's trash picker-uppers, and they clean the streets because they have to.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets so dirty just one night of people, doing drugs and eating, or just throwing their trash on the ground. Because I mean, I'm sure people could be a bit more clean about their activities, but the reality is the dumpsters are locked because they don't want people getting in them. If you have to throw something away, there's not always a trash can nearby. And I'm not saying that that makes it okay to litter. I'm just saying that's the reality of
Yeah.
why people aren't throwing things in the trash, or they're too messed up, on meth or on fentanyl, whatever they're
Hmm.
doing to, like, worry about that. Like, why are they going to worry about that? They're worried about surviving. They're worried about getting the drugs they want, and getting food to eat, you know?
So a lot of the people that you're witnessing, I have two questions. First of all, are you, because you work the night shift, I don't know if you get to see, you stick around that area for what it looks like in the daytime, and if there's a transition, or if, like, they kind of come out at night kind of thing, or if they're there all day sleeping in and out, or if it's just kind of constant all day, all night. Like, do you get to see part of the day side of things? Is there a difference in how things look and how the environment is at that time?
There is a little bit of a difference. And this area, I have a lot of projects in this area. So I come here during the day, like before this night work. I know this area, and I know, like, a certain parking lot that I tend to go to, because I have literally so many projects in such a short radius from each other. So yes, I do walk the streets sometimes during the day, like probably between 7 and 10 a.m., regularly. And there are always people outside. There are always people with stereos. And I mean, I'm not just talking like small, carry stereo, like big speakers. And they're booming music day and night, all day. In the alley where I work, there's fewer people doing drugs during the day, like obviously doing drugs. It's more sort of like, especially like right next to my car where I park, it's really lit up and it's sort of cut back from the face of the building. So it's like, I don't know, it's really lit up though. It just blows me away that all these people like to come and do drugs right under the light, you know? But that's not as common during the day. But then on the other streets where they have music and like on 6th Street or 7th Street, more of the major streets, there's so many people out there and they just hang out and they're dancing or they're talking or they're, playing dice or playing cards. I mean, it is just a constant street life, and it's a little bit different daytime to nighttime as, what the changes are, but there's people all the time, and,
So
and I'm sure people are doing drugs day in and night, but it's more obvious at night when you see the drug addicts.
that's interesting. So the population you're saying, as far as the homeless population, is pretty consistent day and a day, like day and night. I
Yeah,
mean, but you're saying that there is more. You're seeing more drug use being abused at night or used at nighttime versus the daytime.
it's more
Um,
obvious. Yeah.
it's more obvious, which is interesting. Um, the second question I had to follow up on that is, so talk to me a little bit about we'll kind of get into some of the characters, some of the individuals that you have interviewed through these videos. And for all those listening, Meghan Rector, you can find her on Facebook. She's been putting these videos out, and we'll try to share some through Fill in the Blank Facebook website as well, and possibly some other outlets. But they're really kind of interesting to just how she interviews the different individuals, and we're going to try to share some audio with that here shortly. But the population that you're dealing with, Meghan, the individuals that you're encountering, do you feel, I mean, we talk about the drug use, obviously the drug use is rampant, and would you say the majority of the people out there are out there using drugs or have some sort of mental illness? Is that the majority? Have you run into anybody that's just kind of purely had bad luck, where life is just throwing blows at them after blow and they just have not been able to recoup? Or do you feel that a majority of the individuals that you're encountering are of the previous, where I said, of drug use or mental health issues?
Well, those with mental health issues, I can't always talk to them, or I can't always get coherent responses. So it's kind of hard to delve into that. So the ones that are more coherent and able to carry on a conversation, from what I can see, I would say 100% of the people who I talk to are involved in using substances in one form or another. Johnny, for example, the first night I met him, he told me he doesn't do synthetic drugs. He just sticks to marijuana and alcohol. But he's probably the exception to the rule. The majority of what I see crack pipes, I see lots of tinfoil. I mean, it was just incredible the other night over at one of the intersections where the traffic controllers are. I posted a picture. It was at Oddfellows Hall, where a bunch of people hang out. It's on the corner of Stevenson and 7th, I think. And somebody, I guess a drug dealer or something, rolled up and had an entire roll of tinfoil and is passing out like, squares of tinfoil, like 8.5 by 11 squares of tinfoil to all these people. And I tried to get a picture because it was just amazing to see people passing out tinfoil.
So that
like
they could cook whatever they were about ready
yeah,
to ingest or
yeah,
use.
because you fold it up and you put the crumbs in the middle and you light it with the lighter below and you have a straw above it to suck up the fumes, so
Mhm.
that's, if you don't have a pipe, that's
The next best
an
thing.
easy way to do that. Yeah.
So this drug
So
dealer was literally just handing out sheets of tinfoil to people that were standing on the corner.
literally handing out sheets of tinfoil. Yeah. so the
Crazy.
people could do the drugs, I guess, that they were probably selling, to go along with the tinfoil. I'm not sure. I can't exactly say what's happening, but definitely sheets of tinfoil are being passed out, and I don't see any other reason besides using it to do drugs. But I was speaking with some guys yesterday. I was talking to them for quite some time, and they were telling me that just how hard life on the streets is. Maybe some people do have bad luck or just bad experiences or just whatever. One thing happened after another and just beat them down. And they're not drug addicts and they're not alcoholics, and they end up on the street. And then after being on the street, they start doing drugs at that point. So it's not always that's the cause, that's the effect. If you didn't do drugs, you wouldn't have been homeless. Sometimes people start after they become homeless. I don't know how
Interesting.
common that is, but that's what some of the guys last night were telling me, or the other night.
Interesting.
For me, I can, my background, I can kind of understand a little bit. Like, for example, Elsie, the lady I featured, she told me that, it all started with her not getting along with her mother and her mother getting a restraining order against her. And I guess she broke the restraining order, and so she ended up in jail. I think she did 8 months, or that's what she said, something like that. I mean, that's devastating. I can relate to that because I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. Nobody probably knew it because we looked good on the outside, but both my parents were narcissists, and it was really hard to live with them. I moved out when I was 17, when I was still in high school, and I had to try to support myself while going to high school and finishing high school. And it was hard. It was really hard. It was so hard. I didn't have a car. It was hard to, get out of high school at 1 p.m. and then try to get up to my job by 2 p.m. How am I going to do that? Ride the bus or whatever, get up there a couple miles away, Burlington Coat Factory, and I mean, it was hard, but, so when I was 17, I couldn't do it. And, I got into drugs too when I was a teenager. The pain of living in the house I lived in, drugs made me feel good, because I was, I don't know, it was bad Meghan. I was always bad. I was always grounded. I was always having privileges taken away from me. My mother was very strict and controlling, and I couldn't live like that anymore. And I had to move out, but I got lucky. I did have a job. If I hadn't, and it wasn't a plan to move out, it was a spontaneous move out. I just couldn't put up with it anymore. Couldn't live like that. But I did have a job. So fortunately I was, and, being hustling a little bit on the side there, to make things work out, and drugs at that time when I was a teenager, drugs made me feel good. It made me feel happy because I was just at my house and sad and depressed and I couldn't do anything, couldn't talk on the phone because I'm grounded again, and drugs made me feel something different. It numbed the pain for me. And fortunately, I didn't become a drug addict, and I was able to, set the drugs aside and say, this doesn't work for me anymore, and live a drug-free life. But not everybody is able to do that.
Right.
So I can totally relate to family problems that cause you to make decisions, not planned decisions. And I didn't even know how I was going to go to college, when I moved out, because I didn't have any money. That I just sort of lost hope, and fortunately things did work out for me, and I did make it to college and, get an education. But, that's not what everybody's capable of. It's just, I was lucky, but I understand the pain and I understand the struggles that some of these people go through.
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely take your own personal life and apply it to their situation and say that could have easily been, had you not make some, some certain decisions or had some certain situations fall in your lap or whatever took place, that could have, you could see yourself easily falling into that trap.
Right. And, they say that so many of us are one paycheck away from being homeless, and the pandemic, unfortunately, probably created a lot more homeless people, who couldn't hold on to their homes. They lost their jobs. They couldn't make their mortgage payment, or maybe they didn't have a home. Maybe it was just an apartment they were renting, but just the same, they lost their job and they weren't able to maintain that rent payment. then they didn't get their deposit back. Then they're even more in the hole. It's just like, I mean, I just look at some of these people I meet and I just think, God, how is Elsie ever going to get out of the hole?
Right.
Elsie doesn't have shoes. Elsie doesn't have stuff. How is Elsie ever going to find a job, ever going to have a job interview, ever look presentable at a job interview, to ever get a job and make money and try to, change her situation? I mean, it seems almost untenable.
With some of the interviews or the encounters, do you sense that there is a motivation to to reestablish themselves in that type of life, or do you find that a lot of them have? Do you feel like a lot of them have maybe, like you said, given up, or just kind of feel like it's hopeless to not even try?
Well, I think some people have a positive attitude despite, their circumstances. Like Johnny, for example. Johnny is always smiling. I mean, Johnny is a performer, so he puts on his happy face, right? But I mean, even Jacob the other night, the 22-year-old who I interviewed, I mean, he knows he's not too out of it, right? He's doing drugs, he's partying. He still knows a little bit, he knows that he's not doing the right thing, but he was also honest enough to admit that he's just having fun and catting around, as he said it. He wants to get high. He's 22 years old. He's enjoying doing drugs and hanging out on the street and socializing. But
Mhm.
a funny little thing is, not everybody who's hanging out on the street doing drugs is homeless. There's
Interesting.
actually a few people I've spoken with. One of them, the other night, and there are these hotel rooms around, quote unquote hotel rooms. They're rooming houses, and a lot of them are just rooms, mostly with shared kitchens and shared bathrooms. Some of them are for handicapped, so maybe they have a handicapped bathroom in the unit itself, but a lot of it is just a room. And there's a lot of rules around these rooms. And so I guess a lot of them don't allow you to bring friends over. So if you have an option between doing your drugs in your room all by yourself, or going out on the street and socializing and hanging out with your friends, and you know that's what some people are choosing, to still hang out on the street and have this life, even though they do have a room. And I mean, I don't know what's in the room. Do they have a bed?
Mhm.
Do they have a TV? I don't know. But it's not only homeless people out here.
Um, when you're out there, I mean, have you felt endangered at all? I mean, I know there was one video that you presented with Johnny, and Johnny, if his name is Johnny Murray, he plays the harmonica for Megan. He sings her the blues. He at one episode he was building a what I would call a clubhouse. Basically, he was building a shelter, if you will, out of cardboard boxes and some, he actually had a mattress and a sleeping bag. But and there was a moment where another individual was getting involved in your interview or your
Mhm.
conversation and was being a little threatening towards basically just being threatening in general. Have you, I mean, did you find that that's more common? Did you ever feel endangered or threatened, or um or just fearful in general?
No, I haven't. Uh, I'm I'm not really scared of much. I just, from my own personal experiences, I just know that I just have to be aware of my surroundings, and I just have to see who's around me and know where they're at, know how close they're getting to me. Check out how they're acting. So I just constantly look around me all the time. And also, I mean, I'm right next to my job site. There's a bunch of my coworkers. They know what I'm doing. They're always watching out for me. The traffic control, they're down at the corner. So there's, something did happen. At least there are some people who would probably come to my defense,
Right.
but I've never felt scared. There was one time, I guess I was a couple blocks away on a different project, not a homeless project, but it was an affordable housing project. And we were starting really early in the morning, like 3 a.m. or something. And so I was parking, and sometimes I put my boots on in the morning when I get to my job site. So I had my driver door open. and I'm sort of bent over, with my feet out, changing my shoes. But I keep looking up like every couple seconds, like seeing who's coming down the road. Like I don't want to be surprised. And I saw this guy approaching me. He was a really tall guy, and I don't know what he was on, but he was definitely on some drugs. And I saw him coming, so I totally knew he was coming.
Mhm.
And he actually did surprise me a little bit because I didn't expect him to pay any attention to me. But because I kept glancing up every couple seconds just to see like where he's at, is he getting closer to me? Just for self-defense, he actually came around my door, and I don't know what his intention was, but as soon as he saw that I was like ready for him, that I was like waiting for him, it kind of scared him off, and he like ran off. It was actually really funny. I didn't even do anything. I was just waiting for him. Like this dude's coming. I don't know what he's doing. And I mean, he could have messed me up if he wanted to, but I don't know what his intention was. But I scared him off because I saw him coming, and I was aware, and I was like ready for it.
You
I
saw the
would have defended
boots.
myself. Yeah, so that was the only time that I've been at all, and I wasn't really scared. I was just prepared. I was just like, all right, what's it going to be? Are we going at it?
Well, I mean, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and obviously you're in an area that's not well. Well, and that's another thing. I mean, is there a police presence? I mean, is there a need for a police presence? Is it lacking? What do you find? What is the police presence like?
There is a police presence, but they don't really do anything. Like, I don't know what the purpose of them being around is, honestly, because right at where the traffic control is, the Oddfellows Hall, the cops go up and down that street a lot. And I mean, right in front of that Oddfellows Hall, there's usually 20 people just doing drugs. That's where the tinfoil was passed out.
Hmm.
So the
Hmm.
cops are going right by there. And then the other side of Stevenson's Alley is sort of a dead end road on the other side. And so cars tend to park down there because it's not a through street. But I don't know what the cops do because they don't do anything. I mean, they don't interrupt the drug consuming. They don't stop anybody. I mean, maybe they're there if something got like violent. I'm not really sure like the level that they're ready to step in at.
Well, in one of your initial interviews, or not interviews, but one of your initial videos that you had, I believe, was actually an altercation. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Where there were some homeless individuals. One was involved a female that had an altercation with another male, and appeared to get somewhat aggressive and violent.
Yeah,
Um,
it did. It rolled out into the street. But I guess the cops weren't rolling by at that time,
right, right.
and I didn't actually witness that. That was just from the traffic controllers took that video, and
Oh,
I
okay,
borrowed it from them.
right.
So I wasn't there at the time, but I mean, I would just assume that they probably got out of the street before the cops came by. If the cops had seen that, they would have stopped. But that's what I'm going to guess, that the cops are probably there for more violent things, or if there was a gunshot. Because I don't hear gunshots. It's not like people being robbed at gunpoint and like that kind of stuff. It's more
Hmm.
like petty crime, people stealing from the homeless while they're asleep,
Hmm.
or and in this area, like my car hasn't been broken into, but in other areas it is common. I was building a high rise a couple years ago in Oakland, and around that area, um, quite a few people would come to work and then 45 minutes later find out that all their tires had been stolen and their cars on blocks.
Wow.
And one day it happened to one of the rebar guys I was working with, and then like the next day I came to work, and getting off the freeway, I saw another just person who lived over there, whose also car ended up on blocks, and they were just like shaking their head. And both cars, interestingly enough, were Hondas, and I guess they were pretty brand new, and they had Honda premium wheels. And so obviously somebody has a master key for that, because they're going around stealing Hondas or stealing the
Hmm.
tires, the rims. But
Yeah.
so, and then in Oakland, also around that project, a lot of people's cars were broken into, whether they had something in there or not. I mean, a lot of people didn't have anything,
Hmm.
and their cars still got their window broken, you know? And so sometimes people would leave their windows down or their car unlocked just so people wouldn't break the window, and then they
Wouldn't
wouldn't have
damage
that
it.
300, window charge.
Yeah.
But fortunately, that's not this area. Like, I haven't seen anybody breaking into cars in this alley in this area.
So, I mean, so, again, coming from your standpoint, I mean, so there is still obviously you just need to be more aware of your surroundings and but it is more of an endangering area than obviously probably where you normally reside. Um, but you haven't as far as an abundance of violence or an abundance of altercations are occurring where you would need to feel fearful, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's not that much violence that I see. It was just basically just that one time, you know.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, so see, I got the. I mean, so it seems like the majority of the people though that you have interviewed, mostly it does appear that they are under some sort of intoxication, right? They are under the influence of
Yes.
some sort of narcotics or alcohol the majority of
Yeah.
the time. So I mean, it's definitely apparent. I mean, most of the people that you're encountering are essentially under the influence of something.
Yeah, and it's all day too. The other week I was not on night work, but I was back at the project during the day, and I ran into Johnny during the day,
Hmm.
and I hadn't seen him for a while before that, so I pulled over and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I had a sleeping bag for him. I heard his sleeping bag got stolen, and I had one I was saving for him, so I was excited to see him to give him the sleeping bag. And well, I got out of my car and I was just talking to him, and somebody rolled up and was trying to sell him a bottle of Hennessy. He was wherever he got these bottles of Hennessy, he's selling them. And it was like 10 a.m. or something. It's very common to see people drinking alcohol at all hours of the day. It's not a night thing, it's a lifestyle thing. You know, Johnny smoking pot and drinking all day.
Does he say, or some of the people that you've encountered multiple times, do they say how they can afford the drugs? I mean, what are they doing to purchase them? I mean, how are they making money?
Well, Jacob, the 22-year-old I interviewed the other night, excuse me, he told me that he makes money by boosting stuff, stealing stuff,
Right.
whether it's from stores. I don't know. He didn't go into detail. I think it's mostly stores. He didn't say he was breaking into cars. I guess stores would probably be more likely to find stuff that people want to buy rather than take
Hmm.
your chances breaking into a bunch of different cars. I also interviewed somebody else who I haven't posted the interview of, and I asked. He just said he was smoking meth and he just wanted to get high. I said, "How do you afford the drugs?" And I didn't really understand his response, but I don't know. I mean, how these people afford the drugs, I don't know. You
Was
know,
I mean, so obviously Johnny had money on him to purchase the Hennessy, right?
right? And the I think it was the first day I met Johnny, or the second day I met Johnny. Johnny came up to me and he's like, I'm not homeless. I got money. And he pulls out his wallet and like opened it and showed me. And while he did have a couple bills in there, like the biggest bill I saw was a five.
Hmm.
So yes, he has money, but
Sure. Yeah.
some
I mean,
money,
right, but he doesn't have like a bank card where he's drawing, cash out of the ATM though either.
not that I'm aware of. I would
Yeah.
guess probably not. But
Right.
I actually something interesting the other night when I'm doing all my massive interviews Thursday night. There's one guy who wanted to be interviewed, but he wasn't quite ready. His name was
Mhm.
Julian, and another guy walked by and was asking for a cigarette, which is very common. People walking up and down asking for cigarettes all the time. And Julian said, "I don't have a cigarette, but you want $1?" And he said, "Yeah." And so he took $1 out of his pocket and he gave it to him. And I was kind of surprised, like, wow, he just gave that guy $1. Like, Julian looked like he was probably homeless and probably could have used that dollar.
Mhm.
So it was kind of interesting to me. So, I mean, there might be to some degree some sort of camaraderie where people are helping each other out. I mean, everybody wants to do their drugs and everybody wants to do their alcohol. So I don't know, how often people are sharing. But I was down at the pizza place the other night and somebody was smoking a joint and they were, offering it to some of the other guys. So I mean, that's one thing. Like it's more fun to smoke weed when you're smoking it with someone else, not just by yourself. But I don't know if people are offering their meth pipe to somebody else. Like, hey, you want some of this? You know, I
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's kind
Well,
of
and
interesting.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You met there was an interview you did that I watched earlier today, I think, was with a female who was definitely had some sort of mental illness. She I mean, I would categorize it as a mania, like a bipolar mania type, or some sort of schizoaffective or schizophrenia type disorder. But she, you asked her if she was homeless, and she was like, "No, I'm not homeless."
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so I
Yep.
mean, is that common, or was that just kind of her instance where people don't really consider themselves homeless, or
That was my first experience with that.
right?
I just really started doing this interview thing, so I'm kind of new at it, and I don't really know what to ask people. So I'm just trying to come up with questions to get people to talk to me.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I've asked anybody else if they're homeless because it's relatively obvious. Well, I didn't ask her if she was. I guess I asked her to tell me about being homeless or something like that. And yeah, that was her. She said, "I'm not homeless." And I said, "Okay, well, would you be able to tell me about the other people who are?" And she's like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Okay." So it continued. And the interview was really interesting because at the time, there's so much construction background noise. It's really hard to hear a lot of these videos.
Well,
But
they come through pretty clear. I mean, as far as the audio is concerned. So, yeah, there
oh,
you
good.
can't hear the construction in the back, but I mean, it doesn't take away from. I mean, you have to expect that, you're at a construction zone and you're interviewing homeless people. I mean, but go ahead.
It's not gonna be perfect audio.
Yeah, right. So, yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, it was incredible. While I was filming her, I didn't actually understand her as well as when I replayed the video for myself, and I was like, oh, she actually made a little bit more sense than I was realizing at the time. I was just, even though the conversation wasn't maybe going how I wanted it to go or would have wanted it to go, it was still compelling. Her movements and the way she's moving, her hand kind of thing. It's like, wow, this is kind of interesting. And then she pulled out the broom out of her tent, and I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing right now.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
and I had to take a couple steps back, like literally to, for the camera to step back to see what she was sweeping and what she was doing. And I'm just like, oh my god, she's sweeping off her front porch right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Literally
know,
out of a tent. Yeah.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
was totally normal. And then I went down the block. I had a scheduled interview with somebody else, and they weren't there at the time, and so I came back, and that was when I interviewed her. But later on for lunch, I went down to the pizza place, and I was hanging out there, talking to some people, and she was out of her tent, and she came by down the corner, and she was like pushing a dumpster around, and she like pushed it over a couple doors, and like, I don't know why, and then she had this wheelchair that she was like pushing like a shopping cart, and it didn't have a seat on it, but it had like some other stuff piled up, and she's just pushing it around like, it's just gonna go with me, and then some of the guys on the corner, they had their music on, the stereos blasting, and they're just out there, dancing. And so she's walking by with her dumpster and her, wheelchair with no seat, and she's dancing and she's having fun, so it's really interesting to see these people. Well, maybe not always, but they get along and they sort of like understand each other, and like, you know it's a
Yeah.
bit of a copacetic kind of thing going on.
It's an interesting community.
Yes.
It's kind of like they have their own little community going on, as
Yeah, it's
different as it
incredible.
is. Yeah. So I want to play a clip of one of the interviews that you did, and this is with Jacob. And he says some interesting things. So I'm going to play it for about a minute and a half and just get your, because he says some interesting things. So let's go ahead and play this clip here real quick. I've never tried this before, so hopefully the audio works out.
Sure.
Hold on. Oh, wait a second.
Hey, I smoke. Hello, my name is Jacob. I'm 22. I'm an addict. I smoke. I smoke crack. I smoke weed. I drink. Occasionally, when I'm with friends. And growing up here in San Francisco, Bay Area, kind of rough. You got friends that change on you. You know what I'm saying? You got friends that say they're there for you, but really all you got is yourself. And at the end of the day, you realize what makes you. And I grew up in foster care where hanging out at group homes, foster homes, and that kind of like made me who I am today. Like, I'm a good person. I got bad guidance for real. I just ain't got no guidance growing up. So I looked up to the older people in my older people, like such as my OGs, I call them, and they're the ones I related to because they taught me how to do better and what to do and how to approach. And I'm still learning, but I'm getting it. And San Francisco is like ain't no other place like San Francisco. I love it. It's beautiful, but it could break you.
So he says some interesting things there. Number one, I mean, he said he grew up in the foster care, and he didn't really have guidance, to lead him. And that's kind of, he looked up to his OGs that kind of showed him the way, and that kind of put him, obviously it wasn't the right way, because I mean he is now on the street, to say. And the other thing is he loves San Francisco. He loves it there, but like you said there at the end, it'll break you too. It'll break you. So, I mean, he is 22, and he sounds like he's had quite the life already. But he also has interesting perspectives, because he still says, "I'm a good person," I just didn't have the right guidance.
Right.
So,
that was like the best interview I think that I've gotten, like the most real interview, the reality that I want to hear about, that I want to portray.
Yeah, I agree.
That was just incredible. And he'd been hanging around there for a few days, and he's friendly. He says hi to me, and he's in a good mood. But I mean, it definitely shows you that it doesn't take you to be, just 30 years old and a drug addict to become homeless. He was, a teenager probably when it started or something, and he didn't learn the right way. He doesn't know what to do. I mean, on one hand, like he said that, he knows he can do better, and that he just wants to cat around right now. So he kind of knows, but again, I mean, the guidance just wasn't there, Somehow we failed Jacob, the system did. And now he's on the street.
So, let me get my thoughts here. What is your main takeaway personally from the stuff that you're doing? And again, incredible stuff. Personally, we know how you're seeing it firsthand. You're now you're engaging firsthand with these individuals. What is your takeaway personally? Like, how is it affecting you? Obviously there are some sad moments, but there's obviously with any kind of crisis, with any kind of sadness that you have, there's place for growth, right? There's room for growth.
Right.
Like, what are you taking away personally through all these events and these incidences?
I mean, it's been incredibly meaningful to me, just to get to know people. I love connecting with people on a real level and hearing real shit, not just how perfect you are, how great you are at your job, but the struggles you've had. I think that's important, and that's part of my journey too. I think that I make a more interesting friend or person can admit the tough things that I've been through. And I'm not perfect, and I'm not trying to pretend like I am. I've had my struggles, and fortunately I've come through most of them, a better person on the other side. So I don't know what I'm trying to do. I don't know. I mean, I was starting to think that people were losing interest when you contact me, about doing this podcast. And I was just thrilled. I'm like, oh my God, maybe people aren't tired of this. Maybe this is going to go somewhere, do something. I mean, some of the guys I've been talking to, the homeless guys, they've suggested that I could contact, some nonprofit organizations. To put these videos out there more. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to do, but I can see how if I want to keep doing what I'm doing, I could. Because even when my assignment at this specific structure is complete or my night work is done, I'll be back at this job periodically, like weekly, probably once a week, so I can check in with my peeps, but I'm also in San Francisco probably 3 out of 5 days a week. So even if I'm not on a homeless project, I could realistically go drive to some neighborhood park, maybe walk around for an hour, in a homeless area. And I mean, I've sort of established myself in this neighborhood because I've been there for 5 weeks now. I've been working and walking around and talking to people and giving people money and giving people blankets and like water, and showing I'm not just trying to benefit off of them. Like I care about them.
Yeah.
I want to know their stories. So that's sort of on my mind right now, like thinking about doing more work. I don't, again, I'm showing what's going on, but I don't know how it's helping anybody. So I don't know, maybe you have some ideas or somebody listening here has some ideas how I could make a difference. Because I'm just showing what I see, but I suppose there's probably more I could do. I'm just not really sure.
Absolutely. And I was going to lead into that as the next question. Like, what do you see this turning into for you, or just like, where do you see this going? But I think you're hitting the nail on the head for sure. Um, you know, I have my faith and, I read the Bible, and the Bible said, even Jesus said, the poor will always be with you. So the poor aren't going to go anywhere in any society, in any culture. I mean, the poor will always be with you. Which there's always going to be people that need help and um need. I think what's great for what you're doing, and this is the reason again why I reached out to you as a podcast, because it's awareness. And I think that that's the biggest takeaway for me watching your videos, is just the awareness. We grew up in the streets of Vegas. We saw the mental health issues. We saw the alcoholism. We saw the drug abuse. You personally lived through, your drug use as well. We know that side of life. This is, I think it's creating awareness because I don't know, just our population today. Um, just doesn't see it the way that you're seeing it. And I think that that's really the takeaway, is that you're seeing it firsthand. You're in it. Where a lot of people, even myself, I would still be intimidated to go and talk to these people and present myself. I do work with a lot of these people on when they're in the hospital, and whatnot. So I do see it, but I'm not in their world though. They come to me, where you're in their world, you're on their streets, you're using their porta potties, um, but I think that's the greatest takeaway for me. And that's why I needed to talk to you, because it was so interesting to the fact that, you were creating awareness that really I wasn't aware of. I mean, talking to, I would expect most of these people to be older and maybe mental health issues. But no, you're finding 22-year-old kids, that, are out there maybe just to have fun, but haven't not had the right guidance. Um, just a different line of characters. And I use that term, not disrespectfully. These different individuals, that there's a wide variety of who they are, where they come from, what got them there, even their personality. I mean, that guy Johnny Murray has a great personality. I mean, you could see him as like, someone you'd go and hang out with, that kind of thing. So, and then you have the dancing ballerina guy that comes out in his tutu and does his routine on the street light, pole, and
Mhm.
then runs off barefooted. Uh, but I think that's the kind of the biggest thing. And I can only hope that, I mean, that you continue doing it, because I think as you kind of get more involved and get more experience doing what you're doing, and just kind of just keep grinding, you're gonna kind of naturally go a certain path where it will lead you. And I
Yeah.
would love to help, in any way I can, with as far as creating ideas and whatnot for you. I mean, I definitely would love to see more, to be honest. So, but yeah, I think the awareness is truly the biggest key for me, because I love watching them, because I'm like, wow, this is like it's just crazy. It's just crazy,
Yeah.
because I have my life, you have your life, we all have our own lives that we're doing, but then you go, look at these people. This is firsthand of their life, day in and day out. They have a blanket one day, someone gives them a sleeping bag one day, and then 2 days later you see them, they're like, yeah, somebody stole my sleeping bag. So yeah, we can go out and give them everything that they want and need, but 2 days later they may not have it
Yeah.
because someone's taking it from them. So
Yeah, and Johnny, he's an author of 2 books. One I showed, on my documentary. There's a second book which is similar. They're both spiritual truth books, and so he asked. I have a couple of videos I haven't posted of him. I don't want to make it the Johnny show. You know what I mean? I want to feature other people, even though he's quite entertaining. So I'm trying to change it up a little bit. But he did actually ask me if I would start him a GoFundMe page. And I thought, hey, that might be a good idea. I mean, I don't know, it's really hard to gauge the interest level of people watching my posts, because I know it's a controversial subject,
Right.
and like people aren't liking my posts like you would normally like a different type of post. It's and sometimes I have to ask for, please comment, say something. Like, I want to know, I want feedback. I want to know, are people enjoying this? Enjoying, that might be a strange word, but
No, but if they're engaged, if
appreciating.
appreciating and engaging in it, right, right.
Yeah, or are people like, oh my God, Megan, all right, like we've had enough, we don't want to see it anymore. Like I want to know feedback. So, it's been kind of challenging to sort of gauge the interest level, but what you said really means a lot. And I think I will sort of do as much as I can to continue this. And, on days I'm not in this neighborhood and I am in San Francisco, maybe I can, go to one of the major tent cities and try to establish a relationship with people and trust, and get people over there to talk to me. Because that would just be incredible. Maybe there's 50 tents together, like touching each other. It's just tent after tent after tent. Like, there's tarps on top of them. It's a whole thing. It's crazy. So, I also, there's at the same job site where I'm at, during the day, there's a lady, Tanya, who works for Cahill, the general contractor. And there's probably another female or 2 on the job site. We're about 3% rule in the industry. And she's a safety gal. She's a carpenter foreman. And she's just like me. She's talking to Elsie. She's talking to Johnny. She's bringing blankets and she's giving people water. Like, I actually sometimes I go around and I collect a couple bottles of water around the job site, and then I go out and I, give them to people. And so it's interesting to me. I didn't realize that she was really doing that. And I was talking to the superintendent of Cahill the other day when I was at the job site, and I was asking him, how do I tell people how to get into these apartments? Because I don't, like, people are like, oh yeah, what do we have to do? I don't know, and I've asked so many superintendents, and I think I was finally talking to like a top superintendent the other day, and he said, you know what, I'm going to find out and I'm going to tell you. I said, okay, because I want to be able to tell these people who I'm meeting what they can do to, maybe change their lives, if I can help. And so it's kind of interesting to me. I guess Tanya, being a safety person and a foreman, she probably has, just like me, I'm an inspector. So I have a different role than your basic everyday workers, right? So we have a bit more freedom and are able to do things outside of work during the workday that other people wouldn't be allowed to do. So we have the access, and yeah, so I think that's interesting that, it's not like men who are out there talking to these people. It's me and the other female. We're the bleeding hearts of the construction group, I guess. So that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. But yeah, it doesn't take a lot to go to a thrift store and to buy blankets. I bought like 4 blankets the other day. They were $5. Some of them were on sale for half price. Buy a couple blankets, just go out, on a cold day and hand out some blankets or hand out some bottles of water. Not everybody wants water. Like Charisse, in the tent, I asked her if she wanted some water and she said no. And then she pulled out a bottle of vodka and was drinking on that. So you don't always know what people want. When I first started doing this, some of my friends, who were seeing my early posts, they're like, oh, Megan, I should get together some packages and some purses and put toothpaste and toothbrush and hand sanitizer in there. And I'm like, I don't really think that's what people need. Sure, they could use it, but the reality of the situation is these people are filthy. They're walking around without shoes. They don't have any place to wash their hands. They're eating food with dirty hands. they're not washing their face, they're not brushing their teeth. Like, it is so far beyond hygiene. This is survival. This is like the very, very basic, like what we think is basic needs: washing our face, brushing our teeth, laying down in bed. Like, it's so far beyond that.
Yeah.
It's just another level.
And again, just creating that awareness for that is huge. I mean, because like I said, you're seeing it firsthand on the ground. You're in the trenches with it. Where people on the outside watching your videos and hearing about it just don't know. And so we want to help. People want to do something. So I think just by you creating that awareness is speaks more volumes than I think than it may seem, just because you're opening eyes and you're creating content that is presenting a subject, like you said, it can be very controversial, but it gives it that connection that because they are, at the end of the day, they're human beings.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times we forget, and I think we a lot of times we don't want to know that they're still human beings because it makes us feel bad.
And because
um
that could be us too. We
right,
don't want to think
exactly.
that we could fall that far.
Absolutely. And spoke to that testament as well. Meghan, I want to thank you so much for doing this interview with me. It's been great to catch up with you. I appreciate all the things that you're doing. Just keep plugging away, keep grinding, and I think you're gonna. It's making an impact, whether it does or not. If your heart's in it, if your soul's in it, and you got your mind to have the will to do it, you know what? That's worth $1,000,000 in my ideas, in my mind. So I'll be happy to help any way I can, of course. But I do appreciate you being on my podcast. Everybody that's listening, this is Meghan Rector on Fill in the Blank podcast. You can check out her videos. I will have a link for her through my website as well. You guys can check her out. If you guys have any questions, please respond to this podcast, leave a quote, leave a message. If you're interested in getting in contact with Meghan to want to help, I'm sure she'd be more than willing to connect as well. So thank you everybody for listening. I hope this was eye-opening. I hope this created some awareness for you. Meghan's doing a fabulous job, and I can only see that she's going to do more because her heart is fully into it. So thank you very much for listening. This is Phil Austin with Fill in the Blank podcast. Peace. All right. I'll cut the audio
Excellent.
from here. Yeah. It's great to see you. I'm so glad that you are doing this. Yeah, anything I can do, just let me know. So
Yeah,
I'll send
I
you some
will.
idea. I'll send you some ideas as you kind of put videos together. I'll send you some ideas like, I don't know, but whatever you want.
Yeah,
I'll,
yeah, I'd appreciate any feedback. And also, I guess I'm sort of starting to think about, well, maybe I should start a YouTube channel to post these
mhm,
videos. Maybe they'd
mhm.
be more wider spread. I mean, I have my Facebook is private.
You can
For
create a page through Facebook, just like I did with the Fill in the Blank podcast. You can create, manage a page, and you can title it whatever you want. It'll be linked to your main account, but you can kind of keep it separate. So if, like for more public kind of awareness or anything like that, and do the YouTube page as well. I mean, I have it both for the podcast, so you can do both and kind of thing. So
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
and then I was starting to look into the GoFundMe for Johnny, but I couldn't get the. They were trying to send me a code, but every time I put the code in, they said it was wrong. So I'm
Mm.
like, I don't know what I have to do to get this thing
Yeah,
going. But
I have no
if,
idea about GoFundMe. I've never done it myself. I'm like, I don't even know how you get the money, where it comes from. I have no idea.
yeah, I
So
had a friend of mine, an IT person, who was kind of giving me some feedback. So I think I'm going to do that. But if I do that, I'll, well, I'm sure you'll see it, but
yeah,
I'll let you know. And I mean, Johnny, he wants to raise money to publish his second book. So whatever. I mean,
never
maybe
know.
people like Johnny and they want to help Johnny out. So
Yeah,
if I can figure out how to do it, I'll do it. And who knows? Who knows what'll happen?
yeah. And I think what I'll do also, now that I'm thinking about it, this podcast will be released on Monday. So what I will do is I will either create a preview or like after I've released the podcast, I'll throw some hits out there where people can be, I'm like, hey, if you like this video, you can listen to the interview, blah, 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 from our conversation as well. So that'll kind of create a little bit of buzz as well. So,
Great.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm super stoked that you
Yeah.
were interested in this stuff. I think it's awesome.
Well, it's unique. It is very unique what you're doing. And, like I said, there's nobody else that's out that I know that's doing it. I haven't seen a lot of content that's similar to that. If there is, there's usually an agenda of some sort, or some sort of controversial, topic, but you're doing
Yeah.
it kind of grassroots, organic, just natural, just going out and just talking to people. If my one piece of advice would just, to maybe, in your spare time, just, think about things that you want to know from these people and just kind of jot down some questions that you
Yeah.
have, maybe 3 to 5 kind of golden questions that you would ask that are kind of, like icebreaker type questions or things that really kind of spur some content. So that
That's
would
a
just,
good idea.
yeah, just kind of have
Yeah.
those in your back pocket. So when you do one, I think starting like what got you here, or how do you think other people got here? What are like some of those things, and just have like 3 or 4 of those questions ready to go. And like, that's all I had. I mean, I literally asked you like 5 questions and we were gone over almost an hour and a half. So that's just how it goes. That's how it works. So
Oh, I forgot to. I didn't say this on there, but somebody contacted me, one of our classmates, and he said that he's homeless in Vegas.
really,
And it sounds like it might be kind of a choice, but he was telling me that he's like living in the tunnels and with the tunnel people. Do you know
yeah,
about that?
I've heard about that. Yeah.
And I said, wow, that's incredible. I said, I would love to see that. And he's like, oh, well, if you're down in Vegas, let me know and I'll give you a tour. And I'm like, oh my God, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know my plans when I'm going to go to Vegas again, but
Right.
I will
Yeah.
definitely hit him up.
Yeah.
And but I mean, so it's not just like random people. It's like somebody we know is homeless and living that life
Yeah.
too. And I mean, he sounded like it was sort of by choice, like he's trying to be minimalist and he's like, just whatever, he's doing something for himself, I guess.
Mhm.
It didn't sound like he was like desperate and needs money or please help me kind of thing. It was just like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. And it made me feel good because he was like sort of endorsing what I was doing. And it just like,
Right.
he's
Right.
homeless and he thinks what I'm
Right.
doing is right. He just told me to keep doing what I'm doing. So
Exactly. And I think that's kind of like the main point. It's like what you're doing is you're creating awareness for people that maybe not have a voice kind of thing,
yeah,
or, that we don't get to see. And I think that that's really what the key point, and that's what interests me because like like I said, it's amazing to me because it allows me to see a whole nother world of, in our own country. It's just very eye opening. Um, what else was I going to say? Yeah, just take a little journal with you. I mean, when you get a chance, like when you get ideas, just jot them down. That's kind of what I do, for podcasts and stuff like that. And I'm always looking for content. And that's why when I saw your videos, I was like, oh, this will make a great podcast. So, and don't feel like I mean, you're doing great and I can feel the energy coming from you. I can feel like you just want to go like balls to the wall and just like, do 4 or 5 interviews a night. Just, like I said, the homeless will always be there. You're always going to have a chance to talk to people. So, don't force it. Just go with it. Just, be natural with it like you're doing. But, if you don't do one for a couple days, even just posting the picture about something that you saw that was, like the person that unfortunately had that
that's why
overdosed.
the
Yeah,
overdose.
the overdose, where you just kind of posted a picture and, just said
Yeah,
some comments about it. I mean, that's still impactful because it's still, like I said, I see it on the other side all the time, but, watching it happen or, saying it, especially when you're not used to seeing that kind of thing. For me in the emergency department and for us, we see it unfortunately way too often. And we've kind of gotten cold to it
right.
on that side of things, but it's just what you have to do that.
You have
Unfortunately,
to.
you have to.
You can't go home
So
every night and cry about your patients.
no. And it's a crazy problem, and you just have to get cold to it. Otherwise you'll burn out. You'll burn out.
Yeah.
It'll take over you. So, but yeah, hey, it's been great to catch up. It's great seeing you. Keep doing what you're doing. Feel free to text me anytime. And if I get any ideas off your videos, I'll send you some info, or I'll text you and say, hey, this was great, or whatever. Keep doing it. So, but you're doing a great job. You're doing a really good job. So
Thank you, Phil. I really appreciate it. And I'll try to watch some more of your podcasts and see what you're doing.
yeah, sounds good. Hey, it's just all, like I said, this is a hobby of mine. It's just for fun, but I've had over 2,900 downloads. I've had people download from all over the world. I have my highest listeners, obviously in the US, but second is Canada, then India, the UK. I've got people listening all over the world. So,
Awesome.
yeah, it is pretty cool. So, but we'll get there one day. So.
Yeah, just let me know whenever the podcast is ready, because I have people who are interested to see it. So
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
let me know to watch
I will
hear it.
what I do most of the time with my interviews, I tag you through Facebook, so you should get an alert or a message saying that you were tagged in one of my posts. So I usually
Okay.
put it like 2 or 3 of them together to kickstart it. And then, like I said, what I will do is with some of your videos that I have, if I can, hopefully I can share them and figure something out. But yeah.
Or if you have WhatsApp, I could maybe send some of them to you if you wanted
Okay.
some of
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, that works. We'll figure something out.
them. Okay.
Cool. All right. Have a good rest of your weekend, Megan. Good seeing you.
All
good
right.
talking to you. Okay.
Thanks.
Take
Yeah, good to
care.
see you, Phil.
All right.